Just 3 years ago, I was a broke university student with very minimal business experience. Today, I run an agency that's fast approaching $1 million of ARR that's helped over 40 founders generate millions of dollars of revenue from LinkedIn. And in this video, I'm going to show you the exact system myself and my team use to generate leads from LinkedIn for our clients, even without a massive following. Because the truth is, you don't need a massive following to generate leads from LinkedIn. I've been posting every day for over 2 years and I still have under 10,000 followers. But over 60% of our pipeline comes from my personal LinkedIn profile. Because the truth is, you don't need thousands of followers to generate leads from LinkedIn. You need the right system. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do it. So here's what you'll learn. First, we'll set the right expectations so you don't go into this blind. Then I'll show you the complete tech stack from end to end you need to power this pipeline. From there, we'll talk about how to turn your profile into a high converting landing page. Then we'll get to the good stuff, how to build a content engine that actually drives revenue. After that, we'll talk about the proven DM frameworks you can use to put calls on your calendar outside of inbound. And just so you know I know what I'm talking about, here are some results we've been able to generate for clients. Like Eli Rubel, who generated 14 qualified calls in 24 hours and still has 80% of his pipeline powered by his LinkedIn profile managed by us. Or Matt McGarry, who gained over 12,500 followers and closed dozens of clients, his words not mine, from founder-led content that we wrote for him. Or Tyler Lieber from Coconut VA. We generated $65,000 of attributable revenue in just 60 days of writing his content. Let's dive into the foundation and tech stack part of this course. The truth is, the reason most founders fail at LinkedIn isn't because they don't know how to write or no one cares what they have to think. It's because they treat it solely like a social media platform and not one that can generate leads for them. Too many founders focus on the vanity metrics instead of what puts calls on their calendar. They'll write for likes and comments instead of meetings. Pair that with sporadic posting and you're in trouble. You need a consistent system optimally designed to generate pipeline. So, to start, let's set some realistic expectations for the type of pipeline you can expect and how long it'll take. To start, if you're not willing to give this 90 days, click off this video. It's not even worth your time. This takes time to compound, and when it does, it can literally change your life. Just ask me. So, and commit for 90 days, but if you can give this 6 months, you're in a great spot. In terms of a weekly time commitment, it depends on how much help you have from your team. If you've got help from your marketing team or an external agency, you can spend as little as 60 minutes per week on social. If you don't, you can expect that to be a couple of hours, but I promise you it is worth your time. Because let's be very clear, there's a very strong chance that your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth post likely won't even crack 1,000 impressions, and that is more than okay. What separates founders that generate pipeline from social from the ones that don't is that the ones that do stick with it. So with all of that covered, your expectations set, let's talk about the tech stack you'll need to make this happen. If I were you, I would buy a Logitech MX Brio or any type of high quality webcam you can easily set up. This will come in handy later on and you'll see exactly what I mean. After that, I would buy a Shure MV7, just like this, or any type of high quality microphone that you're comfortable with. You'll also need a mic boom arm, just like this, to hold your mic up while you talk. And finally, though you can't see it, it's pointing at me, an Elgato key light. Again, this is all because we're going to be recording a little bit of video if you're comfortable with it for your posts. To that point, let's get into the rest of this. I strongly recommend you record your content interviews, which I'll get to later, on Riverside. This will make it easy to download, clip up, edit, and that type of thing. To that point, I'd get a CapCut Pro subscription for quick edits and captions on the videos we'll be producing. Again, we're not only producing video content, but this should be a good part of your content mix, which is why we're setting this up now. Now that we know what we'll record these calls with, we need to know what we'll actually do with the content and how we'll produce it in the first place. For that, I'd recommend something as simple as Notion. We do this for all our clients. We just set up a simple calendar view, put the post title in here, and you can put the post copy in here. The point is that it's collaborative because if you're working with a team on this, you want to be able to go back and forth. In other words, you just might want to be able to comment, I don't like this line, whatever the case is. Again, Docs is fine too, as long as it's collaborative and you're comfortable with it. After that, I would strongly recommend you get a Sales Navigator subscription. I know it's expensive, I hate it too, but this helps a ton in putting calls on your calendar, and we'll get to this later. And after that, I would get an Apollo IO subscription so you can pull verified lists of your ICP as much as you want and as targeted as you want. This will help a ton in the connections we'll do after. So with expectations set and your tech stack set up, let's get into the first thing we need to do before we even think about making content. And that's turning your profile into an always on landing page. Let's start here with your headshot. Make it clean and professional. Don't go too informal, don't go too formal. To me, this is a nice mix. Once we get to commenting, which I'll get to later, you want to have a recognizable face in other people's comment sections. This is a small thing, but it helps. Most people will do some type of stock photo or a picture of a lake or maybe their family, and that's all nice, but that does not get you leads. Your banner is prime real estate that you need to properly use to convey social proof. So starting here, I have my value prop, where founders get leads from LinkedIn. More importantly, I have a brag bar of logos. For us, it's that our clients are backed by these VCs and more. For you, if you're running any type of B2B company, I would take any customer logo you have logo permissions for and put them here. You might say trusted by logo, logo, logo. Make it on brand too. I made this in Canva in maybe 5 minutes. Pro tip, if you have some type of event or product launch coming up, Your banner is a great place to make a small change and show off that event. By the way, if you want to make this on Canva, the right dimensions for it are 1584 by 396. So we've got our headshot and we've got our banner. Now let's get on to the headline. If I were you, I would put your job title, i.e. founder, CEO, head of marketing, CMO, whatever the case is, at your company name, and then I would use this formula. Helping ICP generate desired result. So in my case, it's helping startup founders generate pipeline from social. For you, it's whatever your company helps your customers do. With all of that in place, let's move down to our about section. This is not the time to write an autobiography or talk about your 20 years of experience in XYZ field. With all due respect, that's cool. No one cares. People only care about what you can do for them, and rightfully so. And your about section is a great place to convey that. So here's a 5-paragraph framework you can use to turn your about section into something people actually care to read. For paragraph 1, let's just call it, you're going to start calling out your ICP by talking about the problem you solve or the result you can get. So in my case, I said, if you make social content, want to make social content, try making social content but we're unsuccessful, you're in the right place. Any founder who visits my profile that's interested in making social content feels like they know where they're at now. In paragraph 2, let's just call it, and you can format this kind of as you want, you want to describe the pain and what that means for the person you solve it for. So in my case, I said publishing content you're proud of on a consistent basis is tough. You get busy, things come up, content ends up taking a backseat to whatever fire you're putting out of your company that day. That is very intentional copy. I know because my clients have told me that this is exactly what happens to them. And I know because I'm a founder too, it does happen. I want a founder to be reading this and nodding their head along saying, yeah, Christian knows what he's saying. From there, for paragraph 3, let's just call it, I illustrate the gap between where they're at now and where they can be and the benefit they'll get by getting there, i.e. hiring me. So I said, that said, it's 2025. Content's king and the benefits for B2B founders are clear. Drive low-cost brand awareness, generate inbound leads from a new lead source, become a thought leader in your space. Fairly obvious, but now we're painting the distinction between where they're at, can't write content, don't have time, they know they should, but they don't do it, to here's what you're missing out on. And that gap is going to be filled by a hat tip. And I promised them this in the next paragraph by saying, you can still benefit from publishing high quality social content without worrying about blocking out time to write, being inconsistent, or if you're making content the right way. That was also very intentional. I looked through my sales calls and this is what prospects told me they're dealing with. And finally, in the next paragraph, we end with a CTA. If high quality, consistent social content sounds like something you're interested in, DM me or visit the link in my profile to book a call. I want you to notice how deliberate this all is. I would copy that exact framework if I were you, but obviously plug in what makes you unique and what makes your customers unique. Next, you have your featured section. This is prime real estate to show off social proof and how good you are at what you do. The low-hanging fruit here is to have a case study, your best performing post if you have one, and your most recent product launch and or fundraise announcement. Now, I run an agency, so I don't really have product launches, but I was able to convey some social proof other ways here. For me, I did the best performing post for my interview show with other startup founders and C-suites. Then I did my best performing, most tactical post to show readers exactly what they get out of working with us. And finally, I have another clip from my interview show where I talk a lot about social content. From here, we need to optimize your button. In other words, you want to guide your prospect down the next step in your funnel. For me, it's my newsletter so I can get people on there to nurture. For you, it might be a demo, a call booking link, whatever the case is. To edit it, you're going to come to this little pencil, scroll down. This is where Sales Navigator comes in, by the way, because I believe this is only possible if you have a subscription. And fill this out accordingly with whatever you want to send people to. Now, we've got our expectations set, our tech stack set up, and our profile optimized. Now is when we get to the fun part, per se, coming up with content ideas. And we'll get into the workflow to record this if you have a team or if you don't very shortly, so stick around. But whether you have additional help writing the content or you're writing it yourself, someone needs to come up with post ideas, and this is a section that'll help you do it. I've probably heard over 100 founders say, I don't know what to post. If you watch to the end of this section, you will never run into that issue again, because we're going to use the 3-bucket framework to come up with content ideas at the top, middle, and bottom of funnel that will never run out. Let's start with the top of funnel. These buckets are most designed to get visibility. This is the typical LinkedIn optimized content you see. Being frank, they're the least about your product or service and more so about getting eyeballs, but don't worry, we will nurture those eyeballs shortly. So what we're going to do at the top of the funnel is come up with 5 or 6 buckets, some people call them content pillars, that we can repeatedly tap into for content ideas. Some typical top of funnel content buckets might look like hiring tips, takes, and mistakes, fundraising advice and stories if you're a software founder, general startup takes and frameworks, AI use cases and AI takes/opinions, remote work versus in-person work. I hate that one, but it works. Notably, these aren't content ideas in themselves, but you can come up with repeated ideas in each bucket, and this gives you a steady stream of ideas. Just to show you how this works, for example, using the hiring bucket, we can come up with content prompts like, what is one hiring tip you wish you knew on day 1 of starting your company? What is one hiring mistake you know never to make again as your company grows? What is an automatic red flag that if a candidate does in an interview, you know not to hire them? What is the most underrated thing you look for in a candidate that has nothing to do with their skill, but lets you know they'd be a great fit? How much do you care about where a candidate went to school or their previous work experience? Is that a big factor in making your hiring decision? I want you to see how you can come up with multiple ideas for each bucket. And you can come up with 5 prompts per bucket, which I'll actually just give you after this. You've got 60 posts, in other words, 2 months of posts ready for your writing. So we'll get into how to write that content very shortly, but for now, let's move on to the middle of the funnel. We've attracted eyeballs at the top, now we need to nurture them. In other words, we have to filter out people that don't care what you're trying to sell them and cater solely to the ones that do. As a result, these buckets more closely correspond with the industry you serve, the problem you solve, and opinions and takes around it. And to be clear, this content will perform worse in terms of social metrics. It'll get less likes and less reach than your typical top of funnel content, and that is the point. Just to show you what the set of content prompts would look like in the middle of the funnel using that first bucket we covered. Number 1, what are 5 pro tips you would give any one of your ICP trying to get their desired result? Number 2, what are the 5 biggest mistakes your ICP makes while trying to get their desired result? Number 3, tell the story where you or someone you know made 1 to 3 key mistakes while trying to get the desired result, and then share the fix or solution they could have used. Number 4, make a carousel or infographic with the most underrated but high impact tips your ICP can use to get their desired result. Number 5, if you've got a blind sample of 50 of your ICP, what's one mistake you bet 90% of them are making? What is the result of that mistake, and how can they fix it to ensure they get their desired result quicker? I want you to see how this works. Those are 5 prompts from one bucket. Again, if you multiply this out across buckets, you have a real content calendar. And finally, we have bottom of funnel buckets. These are generally going to be fairly boilerplate as they're strictly related to your product or service. The point is that by this point, you've attracted top of funnel visibility, nurtured it down through the middle of the funnel, and now you're going to convert it, ideally, with bottom of funnel content. And again, by nature, these will get the least likes and reach. That is the point. That is fine. You just need to do it correctly, which I'll show you how to do. So for most accounts, the bottom of funnel content buckets will be case studies, FAQs from customers and prospects, common objections you and your team get and your answers to them, product or service updates, ideally with some type of Loom or demo, team updates, new hires, recruiting stories, that type of thing, and then press or event announcements. Now, by the way, to make this easier for you, whether you're a SaaS founder or an agency owner, I actually have a list of 200 post ideas for each of you here. This document will be the first link in the description. Get it and you can have access to this whole thing. It's my free 83-page guide for B2B founders to generate leads from LinkedIn. So now that we've covered all of that, you need to know how to actually write for LinkedIn. In other words, you need to know how to make someone stop on your post, press see more on the hook, read it all the way through, potentially save or share it. Otherwise, you're pretty much just wasting your time, and I don't want that for you. So use the rest of this guide to make compelling content. First of all, a LinkedIn post is not an op-ed. You're not writing some long-form blog post or newsletter or New York Times article. You're writing a social post, and it needs to be written accordingly. People scroll fast because attention spans are short, and if you can't grab them within 1 to 2 seconds, they're going to move on. Here's how to do that. Number 1 is to start with structure. Before you even write a word, map out every point you want to make in a post and put them in the most logical and compelling order. This will prevent you from jumping around between ideas, and it'll make the story flow a lot better. This is exactly how we train our writers and exactly how we've helped over 40 founders write. Tip 2 is to write how you speak. Everyone says that, but no one really does it, and it bothers me. Like, literally use the same words you would use in a conversation. If you wouldn't say the word utilize in a conversation, don't put it in your post. Write the word use instead. To that point, you always want to pick the shortest, simplest word to get the point across, just like you would speak. So many social posts today are written by AI that the more you can do this, the better you'll stand out. Number 3 is to make every single sentence flow. Again, this really comes into play when you're trying to use AI to write. As you'll notice, it rarely does it well. So literally, once you're done writing your post, which I'll get to after, read your post out loud. Make sure that it naturally flows from one line to the next and identify spots where it doesn't so you can fix it. Think of it this way, if you have to pause or reread something to make sure the point makes sense, your readers will have to do it too, and that will lose them. Number 4 is to cut everything that doesn't matter, and I mean everything. This goes back to the attention span point. Every single word needs to earn its place in a post. Cut filler words like very, really, quite, etc. Sentence by sentence, if something doesn't advance the post forward, cut it. Your reader's time is limited and you need to respect it. Number 5 is to use active voice. This is a classic copywriting technique and it works for a reason. Instead of saying, this feature was built by us, you'll say, we built this feature. Active voice is shorter, clearer, and more direct. Not to mention it sounds more confident and is way more engaging to read. Number 6, and I was getting at this before, is to test before you publish. Quite literally, and I know this sounds weird, but quite literally read your post out loud. If anything sounds awkward or confusing when you try to say it, cut it or rewrite it. If your writing doesn't sound natural and like you're explaining it to a colleague, cut it or rewrite it. If you stumble over words while you're reading, cut it or rewrite it. With all of those copywriting tips in mind, you need to understand what makes great content. This is where a lot of founders struggle. They think their content is great, but the metrics don't show it. And oftentimes, and this is no fault of their own, the content isn't that great. Can be great, and I'll show you how. Because great content above all else is just immensely valuable. No matter the words or the formatting or the media choice to get there, the reader gets to come away from the post with something. So many failed LinkedIn posts just don't offer that to a reader. I'm going to walk through a couple of examples of great content and examples of takeaways for you to read. This is the post I was getting at before. It's a full playbook for my ICP to get the desired result they want. I held nothing back. I would have been comfortable charging for a consulting call on this, and that's how I know it was valuable. And it obviously worked. We got almost 50,000 impressions, 210 likes, 125 comments. Most importantly, I actually booked 5 calls and closed 1 client off of this. The longer version of the takeaway is here for you to read. Again, if you want this document, it's the first link in the description. Moving on to this post from this founder. It looks like she was an ex-lawyer at the DoorDash team, and she shares some type of framework for lawyers to use to prioritize work within their company. I'm not a lawyer, but I guess this is valuable to them because if you look at the social performance, it got 1,600 likes and 155 comments. I won't bore you with reading the whole post because the link is in the document. What you need to understand is that this person took a framework that she obviously knew was valuable and gave it to her readers. Here's another one that we actually wrote. It's a story from our client, Eli Rubel, about cutting his rates at his agency when he needed to because the market told him that. It's relatable and there's a clear takeaway for his ICP, who are always trying to figure out pricing, which his company helps with. Now, you know what great content looks like. You know how you should write. How do you tell if your content itself is great? Because there's obviously going to be some type of self-bias in there. I made this checklist to help. Again, first link in the description, get this whole document. You can use this for yourself. After every single post you write, run it through this checklist with an honest view. If it passes, you're good to go. If not, rewrite it until it does. Because sometimes you'll have content ideas from your content buckets, but you might know deep down that your audience won't find it valuable or it won't resonate or whatever the case is. There are times where you should listen to that gut feeling. I'll show you how to think about that now. Let's move on to choosing a post topic. Number 1 is, will this post make your audience know you better? Generally, the know part of this framework will tie back to the top of the funnel because they're generally storytelling related, hot take related, that type of thing. Here's an awesome example from one of our clients, Tyler Lieber. This is the business's origin story, where Tyler describes where he was at before, how he got into the business, and how it's going now. This, to an untrained eye and someone who doesn't know Tyler, will make them know him better. I'll continue using Tyler as an example with another post that satisfies the know framework. Here, Tyler shares a strong opinion about how he wants to build his business, what he wants and what he doesn't want. Again, to the untrained eye or to someone who doesn't know Tyler, this will make them know him better. The second question is if this post will make the audience like you better. Generally, these will be pro tips and how-tos, which if you remember from before, will map to the middle of the funnel. Let's walk through a couple of examples. Here's another post by Nick Abraham, a client of ours who runs a lead generation agency. Here, he dispels a common industry myth, which is a 4-step email sequence, and he uses real stats to back up his opinion or his view on the space now, which in this case is running a 2-step email sequence. This is challenging the industry norm while backing it up with his own data. This is a great way to make someone like you better, assuming what you're talking about is actually true. Finally, the third question is, will this post make your audience trust you more? This will generally be associated with the bottom of the funnel because here we talk about things like testimonials, customer stories, FAQs, objection handling, product releases, and that type of thing. When you can show a prospect instead of just telling them how good you are or how great your product is, you can increase the level of trust you build with them. Here's a great post by Bethany from SenseSpark. She's not a client, but she makes great content. Here, she shows off a valuable integration that her audience will definitely care about. It's relatively simple, but I do want you to notice that with these product-related posts, she shows off an actual asset instead of just text. Now, some notes. You will notice that some of your posts fall into multiple buckets, i.e., they might make someone like and trust you more, or they might make someone know and like you more. That's fine. As long as it satisfies one, you're good. If it satisfies more than one, you're great. So now, with all of that out of the way, understanding now what makes great content and how to pick a post topic, we need to get into the absolute most important part of this video, how to write a great hook. If you take nothing else from this video, make sure you take this section. The absolute only goal of a hook on LinkedIn is to make the reader stop scrolling and press see more on the hook. If you cannot do that, it does not matter if you have winning lottery numbers in the rest of the post, it will not get seen. You do this by creating what's called a curiosity gap. It's a gap between what the reader knows now and what you promise that they'll know by the end of reading your post. Now, there are a few ways to do this, and I'm going to walk you through every single one with tactical examples. The first one, and one you've definitely seen on LinkedIn a lot lately, is building authority. Basically, someone who doesn't know you has no reason to trust you, and if they don't trust you, they have no reason to read the rest of your post. So you have to solve for the trust piece of the puzzle before you get any further on. Generally, you'll do this with numbers or figures related to money, volume, or time. Let's highlight some examples of authority-based hooks. I'm the CEO of a 20-person startup. Here's how we build culture without boring team-building activities. This would mean nothing without this. The fact that this person says, I'm the CEO of a 20-person startup, gives them some credibility with you. If this person was talking about building culture with a team of 1 or 2, you wouldn't take as much of what they say to heart. Moving on, I spent 7 years in Big Four consulting before starting a company. Here are 4 lessons I learned that carried over. If this person just said, here are 4 lessons I learned from Big Four consulting, yeah, there'd be some authority there. But the fact that they say they spent 7 years in Big Four consulting before starting their company gives it extra weight, and that is exactly the point. And finally, the last one, instead of just saying, here are top 3 best performing cold email templates, which is fine, not a great hook, we instead say, I've sent 375,000 cold emails this week. Here are 3 best performing templates. Do you see how the numbers here hold the weight and add to the value of the hook? That's the point. As a quick aside here, the more specific numbers you can use, the better. Let me walk you through some authority hooks and examples of where specific numbers really help. Let's read these 2 hooks and decide which one is more compelling. Last month we made 6 figures, here's our profit and loss. It's fine, not great. Or, last month we made $151,323.60. Here's our profit and loss. Do you see how this piques curiosity way more? That's the point. Or how about this one? I've built dozens of websites in the last 2 years. I have 1 pro tip for converting more visitors. It's fine, I'd give it a B. Or, I've built 37 websites in the last 22 months. I have 1 pro tip for converting more visitors. It's a little wacky, a little funky, but it definitely catches the eye, and that's all you need to do on the LinkedIn timeline. This does not have to be that hard, but a lot of people make it very hard. To highlight this, here's another post from our client, Eli Rubel. To start off, we say, year 1 of being an agency owner, $307,839 of profit. Year 2 and year 3 also have specific profit numbers. Again, we could have rounded these numbers out and it would have been fine, but taking that extra step to get more specific goes a long way. And finally, here's another example of using authority in your hooks to make people click see more. Instead of just saying, here's everything needed to make an offer get replies, which is fine, but the reader, again, does not have a reason to trust Nick. We instead said, I've now sent 15 million cold emails for over 250 offers. Which, again, just to be clear, we're not making that up. That's true. And that's a big caveat here. Do not make this stuff up. You will get called out. Going back to this, though, then we transition into the here's everything needed to make an offer get replies. The second hook writing method I want to cover is starting with a story, especially now that everyone's writing with AI, which I'll get to. I'm not a huge fan of it. Stories are becoming one of the only ways to truly stand out on the platform, as scary as that is. Basically, if the writing playing field is leveled, your stories are where you separate from the pack. Let's go through some examples to see how stories can improve hooks. Instead of saying, cold email is working really well for us right now, if you're going to write that hook, just don't even post. It's literally not worth posting. Instead, we might say, last month we tried a growth strategy I never thought we'd try. It changed our business forever. And then we can say, we tried cold email, this is what happened, etc. But do you see how we started with a story instead of just stating what's going on? Let's go on to another example. Here's an answer on if you should be posting every day. Again, it's weak. Instead, we might say, yesterday my biggest client asked me a question every founder wants an answer to. And by the way, this was actually one of my own hooks. One more example, instead of saying, people don't realize how valuable having a VA can be, sure, I'll give it a B. We might say, I tried using a VA for 2 weeks and I'm never going back. Here's the story. So, someone who might be interested in getting a VA might want to know what this person has to say about their experience using one. Do you see how that works? Let's show you some real examples of posts we use stories on. For Eli, we said, 7 years ago, I thought agency owners were losers. Then I learned they're the best kept multi-million-dollar secret in tech. Let me explain. The non-story version of this post might be, agency owners can make a lot of money. Do you see how Eli's actual hook is way more compelling? Here's another post from our swipe file from this guy named Max. He said, we lost 2 of our longest standing clients in July after 3 years together. Then, we signed our 3 largest deals ever and got back on track for 40% year-over-year growth. Here's the recap. Notice how he creates tension with the negativity to start, then the positivity to end, and he promises the story as the connective tissue. Again, the non-story version of this post might have just been, we're on track for 40% year-over-year growth. Big whoop, no one cares. Number 3, and this one's tried and true, you should use it in probably 90% of your hooks, is to use colons and ellipses. Basically, these just signify that there's more to read and that you're promising something more within the hook and prompts the reader to press see more. Just for example, Tyler said, 99.5% of startups get $0 in funding. Here's a playbook to raise millions from someone who's helped raise 25 million with the colon. I also want you to notice the authority here from before, where we said from someone who's helped raise $25 million. That's very intentional. Method number 4 is to highlight a process. If you have a post that warrants it, here's how you do this. Number 1 is to highlight the end result you can get in the hook. Then use here's how or how I somewhere in the hook as well. If possible, include the time frame or amount of steps you used. Some possible templates here might say, our or my step count process for achieving end result in time frame. So a real example of that might say my 5-step process for writing 10 LinkedIn posts in 90 minutes. That's probably not true, by the way. I never even used that hook because that's not true, but still, you get the point. Another one might be I achieve end result in time frame using our or my step count process. Here's how it works. Using that same false promise, we'll say I write 10 LinkedIn posts in 90 minutes using my 5-step process. Here's how it works. And finally, I/we achieve end result in time frame without common pain point using our, my, or this step count process. That was a mouthful, but you'll see what this means below. I write 10 LinkedIn posts in 90 minutes without any writer's block using this 5-step process. If you're going to use the without, just pick the most common pain point people have that are trying to achieve this result, as long as it's true and you're not lying. Here's a great example of a post I wrote a while back using what we're talking about now. I said how I use data to write content that gets 750,000 to 1 million impressions per week with 0 guesswork. This is how I keep clients. Number 5 is to promise a listicle. I'm sure you've seen these all over LinkedIn if you spend any time on the platform. These are just posts that offer a specific amount of points, takeaways, tips, mistakes, etc. Some guidelines here: never promise a listicle for 2 points or less. and craft them in odd numbers up to 10, including 10. So 3, 5, 7, 9, or 10 things I learned, mistakes I made, pro tips for you, etc. Now, very important, these hooks perform best when combined with authority. Let's walk through some examples for you to see what I mean. Instead of saying 7 learnings that translate from consulting to startups, we'll use that hook we used before that said, I spent 7 years in Big 4 consulting before starting XYZ company, 7 lessons I learned that I still use today. You see how we're promising the listicle, but leaning on the authority? Same thing here. Instead of saying 3 common cold email mistakes, we might say, I send 375,000 cold emails per week for 150 plus offers. Then we say, here are 3 cold email mistakes I never let my team make. You see how this is way stronger than this? Finally, instead of saying 9 rules for leadership CEOs should follow, we say, again, I'm the CEO of a 27-person remote startup. Here are 9 rules for leadership I wish I knew in day 1. Again, does not take a genius to see that this is much more compelling. Here's a great example of this from Eli Rubel again. He said, for the last 3 years, I've run 2 agencies that generate $1 million per year in profit, working just 25 hours per week. 5 steps to build an agency that runs without you, which he does not lie about, by the way, and then listicle promise here. Now, as a quick aside, I wanted to add this point in here because it's what we're seeing work the absolute best in terms of hook rating on LinkedIn right now. It's called the negativity bias. Think for a minute about when you watch the news. Very rarely does a reporter get on the screen and say something overwhelmingly positive. Unfortunately, and I don't like this, it's usually negative. Car accidents, political developments, criminal investigations. You get the point. That's for a reason. Whether you like it or not, as humans, we're hardwired to pay more attention to this type of thing. Legacy media figured that out a long time ago, and LinkedIn is catching up. So while I don't like saying this, if you can spin a post angle negatively, it'll likely perform better. Here's a great example. 27 sales calls, 3 months of building, $0 of revenue, 7 major F-ups. Here's everything that went wrong before Profit Labs hit $23,750 of MRR. Humans are nosy. We'll of course read that hook. Now, if you want to use negativity bias as effectively as possible, do this. Number 1 is to train the muscle. Again, I don't like saying this, but every time you write a post, see if you can spin it negatively or put a negativity bias on it. Not even that you have to use it every time, but just train yourself to do so. Number 2 is not to exaggerate the negativity. Just for example, if you're talking about media buying mistakes, saying these 7 media buying mistakes are going to destroy your business is kind of outplayed. Everyone knows it's hyperbole and it doesn't really have the effect you want it to. But if you said these 7 media buying mistakes are unnecessarily driving up CAC, yeah, you might capture more attention. And finally, like I said, don't do this with every post. You have to be selective and tasteful where possible, which you will definitely build an intuition for if you begin posting. Number 6 is to make a bold statement. These can take on a few forms, so let's cover what you can actually use. Number 1 is a hot take or a contrarian opinion. Just for example, we might say remote work sucks, because a lot of people don't think remote work sucks. Another one might be something that goes against what people might expect you to say. Just for example, my account is all about helping founders get leads from social. So a bold statement for me might say 75% of founders shouldn't post on social. For someone who's incentivized to say the opposite, that might make you think, oh, hold on, what's he saying? Or finally, it can be a bold stance on a less controversial topic. This is sort of like a hot take, but it's not really used for a divisive topic. Just for example, that might say cold outbound is dead, which we obviously know it's not. Or every founder should track their team's time. What I want you to notice here is that we don't leave room for nuance. You have to be very careful and tasteful about how you do this, but you don't want to come across as sitting on the fence in your hook. So on the cold outbound is dead hook, we did not say, people are saying cold outbound is getting harder. Yeah, everyone knows it is. Or for the one about tracking time, we didn't say founders should consider tracking their team's time. The way I describe this to clients is picking a side and putting your stake in it. Here's a great example from Tyler Lieber, who says, people who say outsourcing doesn't work in 2024 don't realize they're the problem. Again, negativity bias with don't realize they're the problem, and overall hot take. Here's a simple, bold statement. We said, this is the best video on cold email and offer creation you'll watch this week. Again, only do this if you can back it up, because if not, you're going to look kind of stupid. The 7th and final method is to borrow authority. We talked about using authority before, but what if you don't have any, or what if you want more or you need more to make a post? This will cover that. To be clear, the caveat here is you should only do it if it's actually relevant to the post, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. If you've ever seen those posts that break down bigger founders or bigger company strategies, this is borrowed authority. You basically capture attention by referencing a big name or big brand that's way more well known than yours. So for example, Ramp is worth $7.5 billion. They send 25,000 cold emails per month. I got an inside look at their strategy. 3 takeaways from it. There's a lot going on in this hook, but it's 10 out of 10 in my opinion. We have the borrowed authority of the Ramp name. We have the $7.5 billion valuation number. Then we have the 25,000 cold emails per month authority number. Then we create tension by saying, I got an inside look at their strategy, i.e., I know something you don't, creating a stronger curiosity gap. Then we ended off with the promise of a listicle, 3 takeaways from it. A very similar case going on here with the OpenAI hook. OpenAI is worth $150 billion. Then we said, I studied their landing page and discovered they were using these 7 conversion hacks. So we've got borrowed authority of the name, authority of the valuation, curiosity gap by saying I studied their landing page, you probably didn't, and discovered they were using these 7 conversion hacks. Listicle promise. Finally, very similarly, I'll go over it quickly. Airbnb master founder-led content, capital there to accentuate it, board authority of the Airbnb name. Then again, we said, I broke their strategy down into 3 shockingly simple steps. This part here, which I don't like to admit, really is there to make the reader think, oh wow, I can do it too. And if you're going to write the post, make sure they're actually simple or don't use the word shockingly simple. But again, listicle promise here too. Now, that was a lot, but that's how to write a great hook. If you click that first link in the description, you'll get access to my 150 hook LinkedIn swipe file. It's complete with founder name, account URL, post URL, hook, and the template itself. Now, we need to cover one of the most important parts of LinkedIn posts that a lot of people overlook, how it's formatted. To do this, let's look at 2 identical posts. One of them's formatted properly for LinkedIn, the other one isn't. This is version 1. If you want to pause to read, feel free. This is version 2. If you want to pause to read, feel free. I want you to notice a couple of things here. Number 1 is that this hook is extremely long. If you put this into a LinkedIn hook preview, you'll notice that it gets cut off extremely quickly. Even on the desktop version, it doesn't make a ton of sense as this part is not actually included in the hook and should have been line broken. More than that, there's no real formatting here or line breaks that add to the skimmability of the post. It's like one big blurb, if that makes sense. Now, the majority of LinkedIn usage is on mobile and not desktop like I am now. This exacerbates the problem even more. In other words, these blocks of text look way worse on mobile. You want to respect your reader and make the post easy to read, well formatted, and skimmable all the way through, which version 2 here does. Notice how we separate out the hook with a line break. Notice how we have more line breaks overall, making the post easy to skim from one line to the next, and how we turn the takeaways into a numbered list of sorts, making it way easier to follow along. I know these sound like small switches, but it's something you want to build an intuition for, which you will with more reps. Here are some rules of thumb to follow that will help you out. Number 1 is to never have a block of text that spans more than 4 lines on the mobile view of LinkedIn. Number 2 is to use lists and bullets to separate key points. And number 3 is to never use special characters. This messes up how LinkedIn views your post and it looks really sloppy, unprofessional. Don't do it. Also, just one caveat on this. Yeah, I use more line breaks. This is not to say you need to line break your way into oblivion, because just as much as people hate this, unless you're selling LinkedIn courses, people also hate this. You want to find some type of balance in the middle there. Now, let's say you've gotten your topic, you've written the post, it's well formatted. Now you need to decide what media is going to go with it. And to be clear, this is very important. Choosing the right media can 2x your results. Choosing the wrong media can destroy them. So there are a few types of media you can choose from, and let's cover them. Number 1 is going to be a picture of the founder, let's just say you, or if you're head of marketing, your founder, with their face showing. These are going to be best for posts where the founder gets vulnerable, tell a story about a specific experience they were involved in, or one where they're just not showing an extremely tactical process. Again, you have to build an intuition for these, but when possible to use them and it makes sense to use them, use them. Here's a great example of Eli telling a personal story that was somewhat vulnerable. And of course, here's a picture of him with his face showing. Here's an example of a post where a picture of the founder with the face showing would have made no sense. It's extremely tactical and it has nothing to do with Nick personally. We were much better off using a screenshot of his Smart Lead account than we were using a picture of him. Number 2 is an internal document or asset screenshot. Going back to that post we just showed you from Nick, that was an internal screenshot we were able to use and make it relevant to the post. Again, this is just going to be best for when you describe a system or a checklist or anything behind the scenes, internal and tactical. Here's a great one by Nick talking about the behind the scenes of their cold email data. Here we cobbled together a screenshot of his Smart Lead account where we actually showed what he was talking about. Number 3 is a video clip. If you care to know, video last year on LinkedIn was huge. They were pushing it heavy, reach was crazy. It was like a lottery ticket every time you posted. That's not exactly the case anymore, but I still do think it's worth doing. I think they're great trust builders and it's a great way to differentiate yourself, especially with everyone writing with AI. So my updated guidance, if you want to call it that, on when to use video on LinkedIn is when you're not trying to go for a crazy top of funnel post, but you do want to build some trust. In other words, middle of the funnel, potentially bottom of the funnel posts. Here's a great middle of funnel one for Nick that actually ended up performing pretty well. We saw this take on a podcast he was on, clipped it up, and then wrote a corresponding post for it. It's actually the exact same case for Eli here. He was on this podcast with Toggle Track, and he starts explaining the story of him going from $45,000 per month in terms of ticket price all the way down to $8,000. Toggle actually created a great clip here, so we took it and combined it with the story we knew from Eli to make this post. Number 4 is a fake tweet. These used to work better, and they still work okay, but I definitely wouldn't index on them too much. Basically, use these when none of what we've already covered would make sense. Here's a great example from Tyler Lieber. We actually probably could have used a picture from him here, but we ended up voting on the fake tweet. This is what it looks like. They're super easy to make on Canva. And again, the post performed all right. Number 5 is no media. If your post is valuable enough and tactical enough and savable enough, this is fine. Really, they're just the best for when nothing else makes sense. But even if other things do and you want to test this, feel free. I don't want you to view this as a hard and fast rule, but instead general guidance. Going back to this post I keep highlighting for myself, this had no media and was, in terms of business, the best post I've ever written. Okay, one more section before we get into the actual writing workflow. Bear with me. If you're doing all of this work up to now and you're getting posts out, You need to understand how to analyze post performance so that you can know what to do more of and what to do less of. This section will cover that. Once you've been posting for a while, it's easy to get a clear picture of what's working and what's not. To do so, come to Show All Analytics on your profile, press Post Impressions, filter for past 90 days. From here, you can scroll down and press Show More and get a descending view in terms of reach of your best last 90 days worth of posts. If you want to get really granular, you can export this as well. What I want you to do though is to go through each post. For each, you want to make note of the following. Number 1 is topic. Posts at the top of this list obviously had a topic that resonated with your audience. Don't ignore that. Write down what the topic was, especially in relation to your ICP. Second, and you'll notice this is exactly what we just covered, is the hook. Again, post near the top obviously had some type of hook that made your reader stop and press see more. Go back to the hook writing section of this document and see what variables you used and how you formatted the hook. Speaking of formatting, let's talk about how the post is formatted. Again, something here worked. Is it a bunch of paragraphs? Is it a listicle? Is there a bunch of line breaks? Does it have bullet points? Is it a numbered list? These are all factors you want to make note of. This part's obviously more directional, but still worth noting. And finally, most importantly, outside of topic and hook is the media choice. Ask yourself, what media choice did you make and why do you think it resonated so much? By the way, irrespective of your own social reporting, this is a great exercise to understand what makes people tick on LinkedIn. Just want to reiterate, the first link in this description has this whole document. In it, I have a full loom covering a much more granular way to report if you're interested. Okay, we're finally here. We've set our expectations, got our tech stack in place, learned what great content looks like, come up with great content ideas for you specifically, understood how to write that great content, and learned how to report on it. Now, let's talk about the actual workflow you can use to get the content written. If you have an external agency or a marketing person on your team to help, you can get this done in roughly an hour to 90 minutes. If you're writing this yourself, it does take a little longer. If you don't have a team, take on the role of founder and marketer in the process we're about to highlight. Step 1, if you're starting, is to optimize your profile. We've already covered that in this video. Step 2 is to designate someone on your team, i.e. a marketer, to own this function for you. They need to schedule a 45-minute bi-weekly recurring call with you recorded on Riverside. This will be your content interview. Do not miss these. It will be tempting to miss these as things pile up or push them back or even cancel them. The more you cancel these calls, the worse your content will perform. Trust me, I've seen this with over 40 founders. Step 3, before your meeting, have your team come up with 10 content prompts. 4 that map to the top of the funnel, 4 that map to the middle of the funnel, and 2 that map to the bottom of the funnel. Again, whether you're a SaaS founder or agency owner, we have lists of 200 each for you in this document. Step 4 is to get on the call and have your team member ask you these questions in a natural conversation state. This isn't meant to be forced, and you're really not supposed to think about this too much beforehand. Your answer should be as natural as possible, to be honest. Armed with a recording and transcript, now is the time for your team to write the posts. If I were you, I would do this in Notion or Docs so you can have easy collaboration and edits. We always like to write the exact source of where it came from and the media choice like this. For the source part, have your team member bookmark the exact part in the transcript where they wrote the post based off of. Just for example, this might say 1456 in transcript. Have them hyperlink the bookmark so you can verify that this was your take and that you didn't miss any nuance. For media, have your team member put the media here and justify their choice if you feel necessary. Again, this just keeps everyone on the same page and makes people think about the media choice they're giving. From there, you're going to write the post. I'm going to paste in one of my real posts here to show you what this looks like. So here's a real post I just took from my own LinkedIn. Again, if you're writing with someone on your team, this is how it should look. The next step is for you to allocate 15 to 30 minutes for review each week. Let's just say your team submitted you this post and you don't like this sentence. Here, you're going to tag your team. I don't like this for XYZ reason. The point is that you have some medium of collaboration. This is relatively easy on Docs too, but do not make it so that you guys can't go back and forth. If you do, posts will never get up. Again, ask me how I know. And again, on this post, we have the relevant media here. It was a screenshot. And if you're curious, the post is actually live already. On that note, make sure your team logs the feedback that you give them. If you think the tone is too formal or too informal, if you think you're being too funny when you'd rather be more serious, if you'd rather come across as a little more personable, whatever the case is, make sure they log it so that the next time they write, they can get ahead of it. This should obviously happen for 5 posts per week. And yes, 5 posts per week is the benchmark for posting. You might feel like that's a lot. I am telling you, this is where you need to be. Because if you aren't, your competition is. 5 posts per week at its core just gives you 5 shots on net instead of 3 or 1. And yes, to be clear, it will be uncomfortable to start if you're going from 0. I promise you it is worth it. Step 7, irrespective of posting, but very important, is to build a master list of 15 to 20 accounts that have your ICP in their audience. You, as a founder or CEO, are going to schedule 15 to 20 minutes every morning with your coffee to write thoughtful comments on their posts. I know this is a big ask. If you are not willing to do this, you will lose to someone that does. Let's skip ahead here to how to write thoughtful comments. Think of it this way. Every comment on another person's post is a free ad to get people back to your post. If you've got your headline and your headshot set up like we did in the profile optimization section, this is golden. To give you a sense of how important this is, 2 weeks ago, I wrote 5 comments that led to over 25,000 impressions. Outside of impressions, it led to a books call that turned into a closed client that turned into thousands of dollars in my company's bank account. I know how ridiculous that is to go from LinkedIn comment to money in your bank account. I am telling you, I've experienced it firsthand. It works. Now, just to get this out of the way, this is not something you're going to automate. It's not something you're going to use AI tools to do, and it's not something you're going to outsource to a VA. You are going to spend time writing these comments. Step 1 is to make a custom LinkedIn feed of these accounts every week. I have a post on how to do this in 5 minutes. I'll link it in the description. Here's an example of what that might look like. When it's set up properly, it'll show you only the accounts you want to see content from, i.e. whoever has your ICP in their audience, and their posts sorted from the most recent onwards. Now, you're going to scroll this list every morning. Once you find the post you're willing to comment on and that you can add some value to, you want to craft a comment accordingly. This can be done in a few ways. Number 1 is to expand on the point with a personal story. If the takeaway of the post is something you have personal experience with, you can comment something like, "This reminds me of the time that," story, and then your takeaway. Here's an example of what this looks like. By the way, a good barometer for this is if the comment itself can be a standalone post on your account, you know it's valuable enough. Another one, and slightly more controversial, is to respectfully disagree with a takeaway from the post. To be clear, don't do this just to disagree. Only disagree if you actually do in a respectful way and justify your point. For example, if there's a post about how AI SDRs are changing the world and I disagree, I might say, "We signed up for one of the hot AI SDR tools and we're utterly disappointed extremely quickly. This is why, here was the result," and then a respectful disagreement. Finally, and my favorite, is to point to an external resource. This is a great way to build a ton of goodwill in comment sections. Just for example, if a post is about a given leadership principle founder X decides to implement at their company, and it reminds you of something you read in a book or listened to on a podcast, you might say something like, "I thought I was going crazy for a second, but I'm not. This is a topic covered in book name by author name, which I strongly recommend checking out if this post resonated with you." Great find. I want you to notice how human that is, by the way. No LLM would write that. Step 3 is to rinse and repeat. One comment will never do it unless you hit the jackpot. The point is that you stick to it and aim for 5 per day. This will only work if you're honest with yourself and you only get out of this what you put in. In this document, there's a great resource going much deeper on this if you'd like it. Okay, step 8, we're going to use Apollo now like we talked about. Okay, we're on Apollo. I just filtered for a sample list of CEOs and CMOs of computer software companies in the States with certain employee criteria. Again, obviously filter for your proper ICP. But from here, you're going to export this list. Should obviously be more than 16 people. From there, you're going to open the CSV and filter down to first name, last name, LinkedIn company URL, company name, domain, and status. We'll get to status in a minute. You're going to import the CSV and enter these fields accordingly. Then you're going to come to this template and open the CSV. You're going to take the most important parts. You're going to take these fields and paste them accordingly. Again, this is all sample data, but you get the point. This should obviously be a much larger list as you're going to be connecting with 100 people per week. Then each day from your account, your designated person should do the following. 20 people, go to their profile, send a connection request, mark it as connection sent. This will calculate automatically. Each day, they should go back, see what ones are accepted, and change these accordingly to make sure this gets filled properly. The point here is that you're connecting with your ICP. Once they accept your connection request, your content will show up in their feeds more. That's exactly what we want. Now that we've got connections going, we need to begin posting. Have your function owner begin publishing posts from your account accordingly. As comments come in, have them respond to the ones that they can to the best of their ability. In addition, have them compile the more technical ones or the ones that definitely need a second pair of eyes for you in one message per day. Then, when you can, hop in and respond to them. This is not a one-way street and you need to be engaging your audience. At the end of week 1 of posting and connecting, it's time to track social metrics. You're going to do that very simply in this template. To do so, you're going to come to your profile, go to Show All Analytics, make sure the date range is right. Again, whatever your date range is, let's just say it's Monday to Sunday. Grab this number, put it here. This will auto-calculate. Come back, grab your follower count, put it here. That'll auto-calculate. And grab your trailing 90 days profile viewers, put it there. That'll auto-calculate. And I like to grab my best performing post just to keep track of what worked that week. Let's just say it was this. Copy the link, put it here. Make sure the dates correspond properly, and you're in a great spot. Week over week, this will build up, and you'll see great trends on what's working and what's not. Also, it keeps everyone honest. Step 11 from now on is to repeat this process. The commenting, the connections, the interviews, the writing, the approval, and the posting. Now, let's cover an easier than you think method to put actual calls on your calendar from LinkedIn DMs outside of ones that come inbound. By the way, I did not come up with this. This is largely adapted from Darren McKee's 531 social selling strategy. All credit goes to him. Step 1 is to pull a master list of your ICP like we did before. If I were you, I would actually do some additional filtering here to make sure it's as tight as possible, and ones that are more active on LinkedIn. Sales Navigator has a great filter for posted on LinkedIn, so if you filter down for your ICP and then toggle that, you'll get a list of people that are in your ICP and are active on LinkedIn, meaning they're probably more primed to be DM'd. By the way, I have to be very careful how I say this. There are tools that will let you scrape a LinkedIn Sales Navigator search from the URL. Look into that. This makes it way easier. From there, you're going to scrape that list or just manually make one and enter it into this field. You're going to copy this template from the document I'm highlighting right now and either input the scraped list or just manually input all of these fields properly. Then you're going to take 10 prospects per day, visit their profile, and engage with their most recent post. Like them, comment on them, reply to comments on them. You want to get in front of your prospect. You're trying to warm them up. If they don't have a recent post, skip ahead. But if you were able to engage with them in some way, you're going to come back to this and press engaged. This is step 1. 48 to 72 hours later, you're going to go back to that profile and send them a connection request like we did prior. Again, this is separate from the 100 connections per week you were doing prior. Once you do, you're going to press connection sent. By the way, the personalized invitation here is a great way to reference the like or comment you left on a given post. Just for example, here from your May review post, congrats on the ARR growth. Because by now they've seen your face, they're way more likely to accept. And if you see where this is going, tick connection accepted. Now is where the magic happens. Once accepted, wait 48 to 72 hours and then do the following. Pull out your phone and record a video DM. Reference it to something you talked about or commented on in a way that you can connect to your product or service. Even better if you can offer something of free value. Just for example, I usually make my ICP accounts a free post or a free strategy doc or something like that. You don't have to do exactly that, but you need to make it so that this person has zero risk in replying to you. Here's an awesome post from Darren with literal word-for-word scripts you can use. Obviously tailor them to your own product or service, but I definitely recommend checking out his account for more on the DM part. Anyway, once you've sent that video DM, tick video DM sent. Rinse and repeat down your list of accounts. Yes, this will take time. If you want more meetings, you should do it. By the way, I've got some sample template scripts in here. Get the full guide down below so you can get these as well. I know we've covered a lot, so let's go through a quick daily routine you can use to make this as seamless as possible. Because honestly, without a routine, you're basically flying by the seat of your pants, and that's a one-way ticket to not generate any pipeline, being frustrated with LinkedIn, claiming it doesn't work, etc. So here's a simple 4-step, 30-minute daily routine you can use. Number 1 is to get your post up. If you have someone owning this, you don't have to touch it, you're fine. Or you can hire us to do it for you, but I'll get to that later. Number 2, like we talked about, leave 3 to 5 thoughtful comments. I would always aim for 5. Again, more on building the custom feed there. I strongly recommend you do it. It'll make this way easier. And number 3, kick off that social selling motion to 10 accounts. Like I said, this is actually way easier if you just pull the list ahead of time. Okay, I want to cover one more kind of sneaky hack to put some more meetings on your calendar that not a lot of people are talking about. Sales Navigator has a viewed your profile recently toggle. If you filter down for your ICP, let's just say I'm selling to founders, CMO, director of marketing in North America at companies 11 people or more. We can get way more granular with this, but these are people that have viewed your profile, likely from your content, sometimes from your comments ideally. The point is that you should use this as a signal to reach out. This is actually so important that we pull this list for clients every week, but again, if you have someone owning this motion, just have them do it for you. If I were you, I would come up with some type of free offer or resource to offer them in the DMs like we did prior. I would again record a video and say, hey, just put in a face to the name, saw you checking out my profile, can I make you this? I made you this, something like that. And then from there, you would carry on the conversation as you would a typical social selling motion. One more I want to cover is the comment to get giveaway. This is like a secret hack that not a lot of people know how to do properly, but once you do, it's absolutely magical. These giveaways work as follows, and I'm sure you've seen them if you've scrolled the platform. You make some type of resource, you put it behind an email-gated landing page. I just do mine on Beehive. You make a LinkedIn post teasing the asset and prompting people to comment so they can get it. Once they do comment, you DM them the link to the email-gated landing page. They submit their email, you put them into a nurture sequence, and they get the resource. The magic of this is that when someone comments on your post gets pushed to their network, and then someone else comments, and your post gets further pushed to that person's network, so on and so forth, creating some type of butterfly effect. Here's a real example of one that I ran. I gave away the guide that we're going through. I wrote the post teasing it, calling out who exactly it's for, and promising the results you can get by using it. Then I paired it with a blurred GIF of me going through it. What I want you to notice is that people commented the keyword, I went and DM'd them, and then replied that I sent it to them. This is what led to the almost 900 comments on the post. More importantly, this one here specifically led to about 200 email subscribers. The one I did earlier in the year led to about 500. 2 of those people have now become clients of our agency. I'd recommend doing these once a month if possible. Finally, after all of this, I'm sure what you want to know is how to know if it's actually working. Because by now you've invested probably a good chunk of time, maybe some money as well in the tech. You want to make sure that this is worth your time. So, like I said, you definitely want to be reporting weekly on social metrics. That's absolutely paramount. 30 days in, you should see a material uptick in social metrics. If you don't, you have a problem. 60 days in, and now is when we get to the actual money in your pocket part, you should see a trickle of potential inbound interest. This will come either via DM or via self-reported attribution on your demo form. More than that, in terms of social metrics, you should see some type of stabilization of impressions, profile visits, follower growth, etc. Basically, by now, you've established a baseline. Finally, 90 days in, you should see a material uptick in inbound interest. In other words, you should be getting materially more inbound today than you were 90 days ago. But the benefits do not stop there. By this point, your outbound efforts should also be improved. Say what you want, and everyone loves to crap on the halo effect, but it is true. It's very tough to measure, but yes, posting on LinkedIn gets you in front of more people. Some of those people, your team is likely outbounding too. They are more likely to respond when they've seen your face posting valuable content before. So, just in terms of properly attributing leads, you can do this one of 2 ways or both. Number 1 is self-reporting, like I just talked about. Add LinkedIn on a field on your inbound call booking form if it's not there already, and track the uptick. Number 2 is to customize the link in your profile with proper tagging so you can track web visits or whatever the case is from your profile specifically. Again, this should uptick over 90 days. Okay, that was a lot. You've now gone from zero to understanding how to generate pipeline from LinkedIn as a founder. If you have any questions at all, feel free to either comment on this video or DM me on LinkedIn. If you just prefer that my agency runs this for you, as we have for over 40 founders, click the link in the description and book a free call. We operate month to month and we'll even refund your money after month 1 if you absolutely hate us. Just to quickly go over what some of our clients have said, Nick, as you've talked about before, said hat tips easily generated over 10 million impressions for me. That's over a year, by the way. This has booked us hundreds of inbound demos and made me a thought leader in my space. Or Matt from Grow Letter, who said Christian and Hat Tip have been fantastic to work with. They understand copy and content writing. Most importantly, content's driven tons of views and clients for us. Here are some anonymized analytics graphs from some of our clients just for you to see that we actually know what we're talking about. So, like I said, if you want awareness and pipeline from social, month to month, full money back, click the link below and book a free call. All right, that's all. See you in the next video.